Alright, what's going on, guys? Welcome back again. We are absolutely smashing it. And by we, I mean you. I keep getting so many comments. It's amazing to chat to you guys. And I just have to thank you for all your support so far. One of the ways you can support me, obviously if you enjoy the video, leave a like. If you're sticking around for the long haul, and you're all about that commitment thing, then hit subscribe. It's a really weird way to segue into the subscribe. But yeah, make sure you're hitting the little notification bell as well, so that you always get notified as soon as I upload. I've got about 5, maybe 6 videos, all requests that I've got all lined up. So I'm going to try and smash out a couple of videos a week over the next few weeks. And then I'll probably have even more requests from you beautiful people. So yeah, stick around for that. But today, we have a Mr. Ballen video. Now this one is called What They Find in the Barn is Nightmare Fuel. And I'm not even going to attempt to read the last bit. The Hinterkaifeck Murders. Nice. Not the murder thing. The fact I was able to pronounce it. Get your head out of my ass. Don't put your head in my ass. Put your head facing the screen. Listen to my image and watch my voice. We're going to watch this 17 minutes and 53 seconds. But you all know it by now. It's reaction time. Let's go.
No matter whether you believe this tragedy is the result of something paranormal or something normal and rational and explainable, no matter which way you feel, or maybe somewhere in the middle, the details of the story itself, the actual facts of the story, are horrifying. What actually happened to this poor family in the 1920s it's just one of the more terrifying ordeals that I've ever come across, and it's crazy to me that it's a true story.
He's got a beautiful shirt.
Without giving too much away, someone or something shows up on this farm and it doesn't leave. One of the maids starts hearing strange sounds. They start looking for this person or this thing. They start seeing things moving around in their house, and there's every indication that someone is in the farm. Someone has snuck into the farm and is terrorizing us. And then on March 31st, 1922, whatever it was, finally attacks. This is the story of the Hinterkaifeck Murders. Before we get into today,
I got it. I knew it. I pronounced it right. You have to like the video now. It's the rules. It's not the rules. There are no rules. Rule 1, there are no rules. Except for James, stop pausing the damn video.
Today's story, if you're a fan of the dark, strange, and mysterious delivered in story format, well then my channel is the one for you. That is literally all I do on this channel, and I upload 3 to 4 times every week. So if that is of interest to you, I would ask you to
wish I could post 3 to 4 times a week.
The like button, subscribe, and turn on all post notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads. All right, let's dive in. Back in the 1920s, there was a farmstead called Hinterkaifeck Farm that was located in southern Germany in a very rural, isolated, heavily forested area. So the occupants of the farm were the live-in maid and the Gruber family. The Gruber family was Andreas, his wife Azalea, their daughter Victoria, and Victoria's 2 children, Joseph and Azalea as well. And everything was going fine for the Gruber family and for their farm until the winter of 1921, when some very strange things started happening on their property. The first one to notice strange things happening around their property was their live-in maid. She spent the majority of her time in the main house, and she was alone a lot of the time. And she started to notice when she was alone that she would hear tapping, what sounded like in the walls. Not someone in another room tapping, but literally something in the walls. And she would go up and she would listen, and it would still be tapping, but she couldn't make sense of it. And then she started hearing a combination of disembodied voices and footsteps in the attic. And when she started hearing those footsteps and voices coming from the attic,
we found it, boys. We got him. Mission accomplished.
She ran and told Andreas to say, hey, someone's in your attic. Andreas would go up. Even though he was skeptical, he'd go up to the attic and he would look, and not only is no one there, but it was this totally open space up there. There wasn't really anywhere to hide. There was no one up there, and there was no sign of anybody having been up there. There was no food. There was nothing. And so over the course of several weeks, the live-in maid kept saying that at night she'd be laying in bed and she would hear footsteps and voices from the attic. She'd hear tapping in the walls. She would tell Andreas, and then Andreas, he'd be frustrated with her because he didn't really believe her, and he'd go charging up into the attic and nothing would be there.
For fuck's sake.
She was just not having it. She'd been...
Stop waking me up in the middle of the night for rats or something. Or mice living in the attic. Nightmare. What a way to pause it, though. Sorry, Mr. Ballen.
Working with this family for a long time, she did not feel convinced that no one was there. She really thought this place was haunted. And so she ultimately tells the Gruber family, like, I'm sorry, but I can't stay here another night. Whenever I'm here, I feel like I'm being watched. And at night, I can't sleep because of the footsteps in the attic and these voices. I know you've checked, but I can't be here anymore. And so she quits. And it really catches the Gruber family by surprise because they rely on her help. And so they're kind of thrown for a loop because they have to replace her. And so she leaves, and now they need to go find a replacement. Over the following 6 months, they would not find a replacement, and it would create an increased workload for basically everybody on the farm, which led to a higher stress level. Everybody's kind of on edge. You know, the departure of the live-in maid was a really big deal. And so you got to put that in perspective as you hear what happens over the next 6 months. At first, after the live-in maid had left, no one reported hearing any strange sounds around the house. You know, they were so busy that they didn't even have time to consider if there was any sounds in the house that they didn't recognize.
It's true.
But eventually, Andreas would later admit that he started hearing the tapping sounds and the footsteps in the attic and the disembodied voices, and no one's there. And so now he's becoming paranoid, and he shared his paranoia with the rest of the family, who's now also hearing these sounds and these disembodied voices and the footsteps, and despite checking and now searching the whole property. Like, they've begun to actually do a full-blown investigation. Everyone's just stressed. They don't know what it's coming from. They're mad at each other for becoming paranoid. And so they just continue on with work and try to put it out of their mind that they're hearing these strange sounds.
It's absolutely falling apart in this farm.
But the activity in the house would only intensify. What was initially just strange tapping sounds and what they thought were disembodied voices turned into things going missing around the house. Most notably, a set of their house keys went missing. And there's only so many people there. There's really not a good answer as to why they might go missing, and they only have a couple sets. It's a big deal to lose a set of keys, and they went missing and they couldn't find them. Once the keys went missing, the family couldn't stop thinking about the strange sounds in their house and wondering if there really was someone hiding in their house. And it was terrifying. And then when young Azalea, one of the grandchildren, suddenly went missing one night, the whole family is in full panic. They go out looking everywhere for her. They're yelling in the forest. They can't find her. And then finally they find her, and she has no idea how she got out, where she went, and what even happened. She just was like, I don't know why I'm here.
Possession, bro. That's all I'm saying.
I don't know how I got out. She was exhausted. She was confused. They brought her back to the house, and they're trying to get her to explain why you were doing that, and she can't. They go back inside, and sitting on the table is a newspaper that Andreas didn't subscribe to. No one in the family had brought. No one even in the area, it would turn out, subscribed to this particular kind of obscure news.
But they didn't subscribe. But if you're watching, don't forget to hit the subscribe. I'll remind you at the end. But yeah, if you're enjoying it, 6 minutes in, let's go.
Newspaper, and it's just sitting in their house. A couple days after that, they noticed that someone had clearly tried to break into their tool shed, which had loads of tools in there, very expensive. There was a lock on the outside, and there was very deep gashes into the metal. It looked like someone had been, hacking away at the lock to try to break it open. But they're living in a very isolated part of Germany where there isn't much ambient sound, and so it was strange to them that someone had been so violent with this lock, hacking at this metal lock, presumably with something metal, and no one had heard it or reacted to it. None of the dogs had heard it, nothing. So just very confusing stuff is starting to happen around the property. But it would be what Andreas sees in the spring of 1922 that pushes he and his family over the edge from general paranoia to outright panic. So Andreas wakes up in early March of 1922.
Here we go.
There was this huge snowstorm the night before. He gets up early and he goes to the back door of his house and he opens it up, and he can clearly see that there are footprints that have walked from the forest, which is pretty far away from his property. They have quite a bit of acreage. There's footsteps that are clearly coming out of the forest all the way up to the door that he has now just opened. And he's looking down at these footprints, and there's no return set of tracks. And so he's thinking to himself, well, whoever walked up to my house came into the house. So he shuts the door and locks it, and immediately goes and wakes up his family and says, hey, why are there footprints leading up to the back door? Because there's no footprints going away. Someone came to the back door and apparently came inside. His wife, his daughter, the grandkids, no one has a clue. The maid, nobody knows. They say, hey, we've been asleep. We have no idea. So
I thought they got rid of them. Well, the maid quit, right? And then what, they have a maid again? I might have missed something. I feel so dumb. Did they get another maid?
now Andreas, I mean, he's obviously thinking about the strangeness that's happened in his house over the past couple of months. And so he's worried. So he opens the door back up and he looks and he's studying these footprints and he's like, I just don't get it. You have to turn around and walk back. Otherwise you're here, you're at the house. He shuts the door and he walks around his house. He looks at all of the different exits to his house. So he looks to see if there's exiting footprints, which it's scaring him thinking about it, which means someone would have come into the house and jumped out a window or gone out another door, but he's just checking. And as soon as he makes sure there's no other footprints, he does a scan of his entire house. Because now he's convinced that someone's in his house. He goes to the attic. He goes all around. He's yelling. I mean, he's looking everywhere. There's nothing. There's no one in the house. The family's concerned, but there's no one in the house. So he keeps...
It's Harry Potter in his invisibility cloak. Has to be. 100%. No cap. I'm down with the kids. The kids even say that? I don't know. I heard it from an F1 esports driver, pro Rocket League player, probably Drake. Definitely not my mum. But I said it.
Keeps everything locked, and he goes outside and he starts tracking these footprints back to where they came from. And he walks all the way to the forest, and they just kind of stop abruptly. Like they just started kind of magically at the edge of the tree line and walked right up to his house, but there's no clear origination besides it's just in the forest somewhere. And there's also no clear sense of what happened once they arrived at the door. So after doing one more loop around his property, he goes in the barn, he goes in the shed, he goes back in his house, he's checking the attic, he's looking everywhere, and he can't find any indication that some stranger is here. He finally decides that he's going to tell someone about what's been happening at his property.
Now?
So they did have a neighbor, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, who was his closest neighbor, who was not really that close, but a couple hundred yards away. And he goes over and he tells Lorenz everything. I've been hearing sounds. My maid quit because she was hearing sounds. We looked in the attic. We couldn't find anything. Then we started hearing sounds. The keys go missing. There's this newspaper in my house. My granddaughter's running out in the middle of the night. She's disappearing. She doesn't know what's going on. These footprints. I can't make sense of it. And so Lorenz, also not knowing what to make of it, suggests like, hey, I have extra weapons. You want to take an extra rifle and arm yourself, protect yourself? And Andreas just says, you know what? No, I'm good. I'm going to pass on the rifle. I'm probably overreacting anyways, and I'm sure we're just fine. But it would turn out he was not just fine, and he probably should have taken up Lorenz on the offer. So just a couple of days after speaking with his neighbor about the weirdness happening on his property,
I'm starting to get, like, whenever you get about this far through a Mr. Ballen video, you just know shit is about to hit the fan. And that's it. That is a guaranteed. Check out any of the other videos I've reacted to of Mr. Ballen. It's literally just as the little red bar passes where his left nipple would be, shit hits the fan. I'm excited.
the Gruber family got a little bit of good news, which was they finally were able to locate another maid, a live-in maid, to come stay with them to replace the one who had left because she believed the place was haunted. And so a few weeks later, on March 31st, 1922, this new maid shows up to Hinterkaifeck. But unfortunately, this would also be the same date a horrible tragedy unfolds at the Hinterkaifeck farm. Over the course of 24 hours, someone or something was in the barn on Hinterkaifeck and was able to silently lure in members of the Gruber family one by one without telling anybody else what they were doing, they would walk over almost like in a trance into the barn, where they would be struck in the head by something called a mattock, which is kind of like an axe. Blow to the head and they're down. As soon as they're down, whoever was in there, whatever was in there, would take their bodies and move them to the corner and lay them down, kind of square them up against the corner of the barn, and then cover them with hay. And then as soon as they were deceased, he would go, whatever it was, would go back and lure in the next person. So over a whole day, each of these members of the family were being lured into this barn where investigators, nobody knows what it was that was luring them in. They weren't scared when they went in. Their guard was down, and they would go in and then get hit in the head with this mattock until there was 4 people stacked up in the corner. And at that point, the remaining 2 people on the farm were still in the house sleeping, and whoever was doing this went into the house and used the mattock to end their lives as well. 4 days later, on April 4th, a repairman who was scheduled to come to the Hinterkaifeck farm shows up to repair the feeding machine. He goes to the door, he knocks on the door, and it's locked, and he can see lights on inside, he can hear the dog barking inside, but no one comes to greet him. Now, the feeder was outside of the main house, and it was actually on basically a public area of the farm, so he didn't need them to physically get to the feeder, and he knew how to fix it. So after trying the front door, going to the back door, looking in the windows and seeing lights, hearing the dog, but everything's locked, he just said, you know what, I'm just gonna do the job. So he goes into the area where the feeder is, he does the repair, and as he's leaving, he notices that the dog that was barking, that was inside the house, is now outside the house tied up. And so he goes over to that section of the house thinking, oh, well, now I'll knock on the door and someone's sure to see me. And again, no one comes to the door, and the back door that clearly must have just been opened to let the dog out, is locked again. And so he's like, man, that's odd. And so instead of just leaving, he finishes the job with the feeder, and he goes over to Lorenz Schlitten.
I'm a little bit scared for this repairman. But that's so weird with the dog. Like, what? It was the dog. Demon dog, confirmed. You heard it here first. Damn dog. Oh, it's so weird, man. What the I have no idea. Carry on, Mr. Ballen. Sorry for interrupting your class.
Bauer's house, the neighbor, and he says, hey, just so you know, I was just over at the Gruber family's farm. I fixed their feeder like they wanted me to, but no one was there, but maybe somebody was there because the dog was inside, then it was outside. Don't know what's going on, but can you just let them know that I was here because I couldn't get in touch with them. But it prompts Schlittenbauer to go check on the Grubers because, they haven't seen him in a couple days anyways.
Not the neighbor.
They'll swing by and just make sure everything's okay. So they go over to Hinterkaifeck, and the lights are on in the house. The dog, sure enough, is outside. The doors are locked, and they see that the barn is actually open. So they go over to the barn, and in the barn, at first they don't see anything, but in the back corner, underneath some hay, are 4 of the bodies of the Gruber family. They go inside and they find the remaining 2 bodies, and no one else is there. Although there was signs of someone recently eating in the kitchen. The fire was lit. It was like the house was being lived in at that very moment. Although to Schlittenbauer and anybody that was there, they have no way of knowing that it's been days since the Gruber family had passed away. And so they end up leaving and getting in touch with authorities. So the police show up, and they're able to determine with relative certainty that the tragedy took place on March 31st. But for 4 days afterwards, someone lived in the Gruber house, slept in their beds, ate their food, lit fires, lounged around inside. They
let the dog in and out, apparently. What?
Played with the dog. They milked the cows.
And the dog was just fine with that? Bro, this guy just killed your family. Not being blunt, but that's what happened. And the dog's just like, hey, cool, man. If you can throw the ball, I'll go fetch it. You can feed me. Let me out when I need to go to the toilet. We cool. And the guy was like, yeah, all right, let's get this fire on.
I mean, they lived in this house. They ran the farm for 4 days. And other neighbors would even say that, yeah, we saw smoke coming out of the chimney on, April 3rd and April 2nd. And so it was confirmed that someone had been staying in this house, which is so creepy. And so the police are a little bit baffled, and they're like, okay, well then it was probably a drifter. Target of opportunity. They probably saw this isolated farm, and they probably were going to rob them, stay there a little bit, and then leave. But when they searched the farmhouse, there were large sums of cash that were just out practically in the open, like barely hidden, that had not been taken. And anybody that was robbing the place would have taken the cash. And so probably wasn't a robbery, which leaves maybe a crime of passion. But they were like, what's the motive? And unfortunately, Andreas was not particularly well liked in the town that was nearby. And so there was lots of people that didn't like Andreas, which made it really hard to whittle it down. So they started just interviewing like crazy. They're talking to hundreds of people that were in connection with, that could be connected to this, but they're getting nowhere. They did feel like Lorenz Schlittenbauer was probably the best suspect, because he's right there, he's right next door, he's their neighbor. And in fact, he had wanted to marry Victoria, the daughter, and Andreas had told him outright no, and they thought that that could be a reason. But like the big issue with Lorenz Schlittenbauer being the primary suspect is, he had a farm to keep and a family to take care of. And so how could he have committed this crime and then ran the Hinterkaifeck farm for 4 days and lived there and slept there without his family knowing? And his family's like, no, he's been here with us. And so the police, they aren't able to solve it. They don't really have any decent suspects. And so they kind of leave it with, well, whoever did this probably had been there for about 6 months, potentially, before they committed the crime.
That's so strange, though. Like, with the story about the footprints, just at the edge of the tree line up to the house, that I'm assuming was locked, too. They have to be like next level ninja to jump down from a tree, walk all the way up, go in the house after picking the lock, and then somehow avoid being found in the whole thing. And if it's not paranormal, that means he's doing all the tapping, he's doing all the whispering. So how the hell that's a person is beyond me. You guys have got to let me know what you think as well, because this shit is weird.
And then stayed there for a few days afterwards and then vanished. And to this day, they have not been caught. And they even reopened this case in 2007. But they found that, despite the number of suspects and despite the evidence available, it just wasn't enough to provide any sort of clarity on what actually happened. So it remains a huge mystery. So like any other high-profile unsolved mystery, there are literally hundreds of potential explanations for what could have happened. But what I'm most
It was the dog. Demon dog confirmed, Mr. Ballen.
interested in is what you all think could have happened.
Just told you.
I'll do my best to look through your comments, and I'll respond to the ones that are the most interesting or the most plausible. So please, if you would, in the comment section, let me know what you think happened at Hinterkaifeck. And if you
And also, let me know what you think. And yeah, I'm calling Demon Dog, really. But how it would have swung the weapon, really don't know.
If you haven't already, please gently 360 no scope the like button, and then please also subscribe and turn on all notifications so you get more content just like this in the days to follow.
And the same goes for you. I'm copying Mr. Ballen. 360 no scope that subscribe button. I'm joking, I can't steal his way of being with his channel and his community. But I've got you guys, you beautiful people. Today, when I'm recording this, we're on 157. There's always a thing, whenever I say it, when I'm recording, I'll always end up getting another subscriber just after I finish recording, or later than in that evening, or the day after, before the video goes up. And then every time I'm just wrong. So prove me wrong. We're on 157 subscribers now. Probably not. But we're on that now. And if you're watching my mouth move at this point and my hands fly around, then it means you enjoyed the video and you want to watch more. So hit the subscribe button now. If you enjoyed the video, obviously leave a like. Really helps me understand what you guys enjoy. Specifically, whether it's Mr. Ballen, Nuke's Top 5, anything like that. There's even a BuzzFeed video I'm going to do tomorrow. Got a lot of recording to do to catch up with my schedule. But yeah, that's really it. I think it's Demon Dog. Absolutely. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. And if you have suggestions for what I should watch, leave those in the comments too. Yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. But I'll see you all in the next video.